In every civilization, from ancient Greece to Hinduism, from Christianity to Buddhism, one question has deeply shaken the mind and faith: who created God? For the materialist, this is a circular fallacy with no way out. For the theist, it is a sacred mystery beyond understanding. However, the great enlightened master Ramana Maharshi skillfully brought this profound question into the furnace of direct self-illumination. A truth revealed, causing the individual ego to dissolve. Before asking who created God, ask, who is asking? Only when you realize that the questioner is not a fixed entity can you see clearly God is not an external object, a powerful figure in the sky above, but the very ground of being that manifests within you, from which all life and all things emerge. God, the ground of existence, not the object of creation. One day, a sincere person came to Ramana Maharshi and asked, "Do you believe in God?" Ramana did not rush to give a concept or cite any doctrine. He simply asked back, with a knowing smile, "Who is the questioner?" The seemingly simple question was an arrow that pierced straight into the heart of the ego, not to evade but to awaken. It was not intended to give an answer to the concept of God, but to dissolve the question naturally, through the questioner's own self-reflection. As long as there is a questioning ego, the so-called God will always be an external object, a concept to be sought, a power to be grasped, a metaphysical being to be explained. But the essential point is, God cannot be the object of knowledge, because he is the very basis of the act of knowing. God, concept or reality in its own right. In the Upanishads, the fountainhead of Indian wisdom, there is a clear statement. Brahman, the supreme reality, cannot be seen, cannot be thought, cannot be understood by the mind. But it is he who makes us see, think, and understand. This statement is not contradictory. It is a direct reference to the limitations of the ordinary mind and the limitlessness of the ultimate truth. Ramana Maharshi did not argue about God. He became the living embodiment of Brahman through pure existence. For him, God was not a being from above bestowing grace, but what is itself, pure, unchanging, unborn, undying, unnameable. He is not the literal creator of the world, but the primordial ground that makes everything possible. Not an external force, but the deepest inner awareness. The quest for the questioner, the root of every spiritual journey. Humans are often caught up in big questions about the origin of the universe, the purpose of life, or the nature of God. But we rarely stop to ask, who is asking these questions? Ramana Maharshi, with directness and profound insight, focused on this very core point. You ask, who created God? But have you ever asked, who is asking this question? This question is like a clear mirror, shining directly into the consciousness, revealing a previously unrecognized truth, that the questioner, has no fixed entity. Look deeply into yourself. Who is I? Is it this body? Is it the incessant stream of thoughts? Is it the fleeting emotions like clouds? Or is it the sum total of accumulated memories? All these are constantly changing, never remaining in the same form. So how can I be considered real, unchanging? The I is just an idea, consciousness is the eternal reality. When you look deeply within, you will realize that the so-called questioner cannot be grasped, because it is just a flow of ongoing experience, without any real roots. And when you are no longer identified with this false I, the whole question of God disappears. Not because it is explained in words, but because it is no longer necessary, no longer relevant to the reality that has been revealed. Because what you are seeking is the very thing that is asking. And the questioner, when traced to its very roots, is no longer revealed as a separate individual, but as pure consciousness, nameless, formless, boundaryless, knowing itself, free and eternal. When the questioner disappears, only the supreme state of enlightenment remains. That supreme state does not come from the complete dissolution of the illusion of the questioner. It is the moment when God is no longer an abstract concept, no longer an object of worship from afar, but becomes you, no longer divided, no longer limited. It is absolute union, where the seeker and the sought become one, in the stillness and eternity of the supreme consciousness. No one to ask, God reveals as you are. Ramana Maharshi, with his absolute awareness, poured cold water on that sweet dream, removing the veils that covered the illusion. You cannot see God, because you are looking for Him as an object to be seen. But God is not the thing to be seen, it is the seeing itself. God is not the form, it is the knowing. This is a radical transformation in the way you perceive reality. When you look for God as a separate entity, you inadvertently place Him outside of you, in the future, within the reach of a separate and finite I. However, that I, as Ramana pointed out, is just a conceptual shell, a collection of memories, a false identification habit. It is not your true nature. And when the seeker disappears, the sought after is revealed. You think you need to see God. But in fact, you are already God. Just stop believing that you are someone separate, and what remains is God. This is not a complicated word game or an abstract philosophy. It is the living experience of those who dare to stop, dare to turn inward, no longer trying to grasp or explain, but just abide in pure presence. Enlightenment happens when the seeker disappears, not when you find. Enlightenment is not a seismic event, not a moment of meeting God, not bright lights, sacred sounds, or temporary euphoria. Enlightenment is the complete falling away of the illusion of the seeker. And when the seeker is no longer there, the sought after need not appear either. For they are inherently one, indivisible. Ramana Maharshi made a simple yet profound analogy. You are wearing colored glasses and wondering why the world is colored. Take them off, and you will see that everything is unclouded, always revealed. No need to understand, just stop. In the modern world of information overload, we are accustomed to explaining and justifying everything. But Ramana does not ask you to understand. He only asks you to stop. Stop all your wandering thoughts. Stop identifying with the emotions of the moment. Stop chasing after external answers. Stop trying to find God as an event that must happen in the future. And in that moment of stopping, you will touch the wordless knowing. This is not the knowing of the brain or the accumulation of knowledge. It is the knowing that is already there, before the first thought arises, before the concept of you exists. God reveals as pure presence, nameless, formless, objectless. Then there is nothing to ask. There is nothing to understand. There is no one to attain or become. God is no longer a distant idea to worship. He becomes what is present here and now, still, unmoving, unborn, and uncreated. It is not blind faith. It is the supreme state of knowing, dependent on no one, without any conditions. Ramana calls it the self, you, but not the limited self. When presence is the answer, encounters that dissolve the ego. Ramana Maharshi simply sat in silence, and that silence was the most profound teaching, resonating to the core of every human being. Into that peaceful space, seekers, from learned scholars to simple laymen, from devotees to skeptics, entered with their minds full of questions, but when they left, they often burst into tears without knowing why, with a sense of liberation that could not be named. He didn't speak, but they understood. The strangest thing about Ramana Maharshi was, he didn't try to change anyone. There were no techniques taught, no systems of thought or dogma imposed. And it was the absence of these that made his presence a mirror of one's own pure self. Ramana does not teach. He disintegrates those who need it. An anonymous disciple. Those who sat before him in silence often describe a feeling of being drained of the ego, of having nothing to cling to. Yet, at the same time, they felt a sense of relief deep within, as if the false I had died, and what remained was the true life, the eternal essence. The invisible field of consciousness that everyone feels. Many people have reported that, even as they entered the ashram, before they had even seen Ramana, a profound feeling welled up from within. The mind stopped abruptly. Emotions fell away, dissolved. The presence became overwhelmingly clear, filling every space. People come to hear profound teachings, but it is the absence of words that teaches them the most profound thing. There is no need to understand, just be present. A look, enough to burn the past. A series of recorded cases all have one thing in common. They entered the room with a lifetime of worries, beliefs, and theories, but when they left, they felt as if they had shed the burden of many lifetimes. A student once recounted. I asked him a long question about liberation. He just looked at me, saying nothing. In that look, all words became ridiculous, meaningless. I bowed my head and cried. There was nothing more to explain. Ramana's gaze was not personal. It was not the gaze of a person with his own thoughts. It is the gaze of pure reality, not judging, not pitying, not possessing, but simply shining, penetrating all layers of illusion. Annamalai Swami, enlightenment in every hammer stroke. Annamalai Swami, one of Ramana's closest disciples, was not taught any religious teachings or scriptures. Instead, he was given seemingly mundane tasks such as building temples, mixing mortar, or drawing water. At first, he was puzzled, why would an enlightened master make his disciples do such hard manual work? But after years of hard labor, he burst into tears and exclaimed, He never taught me a word, but I was taught in every drop of sweat, in every hammer stroke. I saw that God was also mixing cement. For Ramana, every action, if performed without the interference of the ego, was a profound meditation. And everywhere, if there is conscious presence, becomes a holy place. The dissolution happens not through understanding, but through pure contact. When people come into contact with Ramana, they do not feel healed in the usual sense, they feel disintegrated. This is not a gentle healing, but a radical dismantling of all layers of false identification. I am this body. I am a temporary emotion. I am a practitioner. I am a person who is progressing on the spiritual path. All these identifications collapse. And in the ruins of that illusion, the self, the true self, emerges. It needs no introduction. It needs no confirmation. It is always there. He did not create the enlightened one, he removed the one who never existed. Just as the sun does not create light, but simply exists to dispel darkness, Ramana did not enlighten others. He only dispelled the illusion that he was not enlightened. His presence was a great negation of the false belief that there was something lacking or to be achieved in you. I do not teach you to be anything. I only teach you to see that you are not what you think you are. Ramana Maharshi. And in the end, the disciple realizes there is nothing more to learn. No certificates are awarded. No spiritual degrees are conferred. Ramana did not say, "Now I am ready to be enlightened." He simply remained silent, and that silence made the other person see for themselves that they were always true, eternal, and whole. They realized that all external searches were futile when the true nature was already within. Selfless action when life becomes mindful meditation. Someone asked Ramana Maharshi, "If I am enlightened, do I need to do anything else?" He answered profoundly, "Who is the doer? The action still goes on, but there is no one to receive. There is no one to enjoy. There is no one to suffer." This is the most subtle and profound point in Ramana's teaching. Enlightenment does not mean withdrawing from life. Enlightenment is when there is no someone in you who is trying to live your life. Not giving up action, but giving up the doer. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna taught Arjuna a great truth. Act, but not for results. Act as a sacred duty, without possession, without expectation. This is the spirit of karma yoga, yoga of action, and Ramana Maharshi lived it absolutely. He did not advocate retreating into the mountains or becoming a hermit to avoid the world. He lived among people, but was completely untouched or untouched by the currents of life. He once said, "A liberated mind is a meditation retreat wherever it is. If the ego is not dissolved, then going to the forest is just an escape. Doing without doing, action happens in stillness. A person sweeps the yard. A person meditates in a cave. A person takes care of the family. A person recites mantras in a temple. If there is an ego that owns the action, then whatever it is, everything becomes an action of the ego, full of desire and worry. On the contrary, if there is no someone doing, then whether cutting wood, carrying water, driving, or taking care of children, everything is pure meditation. Because what matters is not the outward form of the action, but the inner root. Is there anyone who is claiming to be the doer? Is there anyone who enjoys the results? Is there anyone who is hurt by the results? When all the answers are no, then you have entered the ultimate state of selfless action. No need to control, let life act through you. Ramana did not teach you to control your thoughts, suppress your emotions, or impose rigid meditation on your life. He taught you to completely let go of ownership of all actions. You do not need to control your body and mind. Know that you are not your body and mind. When you are no longer identified with your body, with your emotions, with your thoughts, then action continues as a natural flow of life, without any intervention or control from the ego. You seem to be doing nothing, but everything is still done perfectly. Stillness in the flow of life, no withdrawal, no escape. Some people mistakenly think that, to attain enlightenment, one must go into the deep forest, must go into seclusion, must separate from the world. Ramana destroyed all that idea. He lived among people, still talked, still walked, still observed everything, but inside was completely unmoved by external events. He said, "The enlightened person does not withdraw from life. He is just no longer at the center of his life. That is, every action still happens, but there is no one to own that action, no one to be affected by its results. And that is absolute freedom, not from doing anything, but from no one to do anymore. When you become a mirror, life reflects without leaving a trace. The unenlightened person acts like an actor on the stage of life, always playing a role, always worrying about the outcome, always carrying his mood with every step. The enlightened person acts like a clear mirror. No image is retained. No mind is in control or interfering. No rejection of anything that appears. Everything comes, is done, and then disappears. No one is there to accumulate experience, to be proud or regretful. The liberated person is no longer the doer. He is the space where everything happens. And then, ordinary life becomes a sacred ceremony. There is no more separation between life and religion. There is no more choice of what is practice, what is not practice. Every step, every breath, every interaction is part of the awakening that lives itself through you. Life then ceases to be a journey of constant search. It is the full expression of what is already full, here and now. Namaste.